bronze cup rests on a low wooden table. Inside it is a strange liquid, thick, heavy. It glints like silver in the soft light of an oil lamp. The man who lifts the cup is the emperor, the son of heaven, the ruler of one of the largest empires on earth. And tonight, he is drinking metal. The liquid contains mercury, ground minerals from deep mountains, heated with herbs, mixed by court alchemists who promise something every ruler wants: more time, perhaps even forever. In ancient China, during the long years of the Han Dynasty, some emperors believed death could be delayed or escaped. The belief came from early Taoist ideas about the body and the natural world. If metals and stones could change inside a furnace, perhaps the human body could change too. Perhaps it could become something stronger, something closer to the earth itself, something that would not decay. The historian Sima Qian wrote about these beliefs nearly 2,000 years ago. His great History, the Records of the Grand Historian, tells us about emperors, wars, court politics, and strange ideas that moved through the palace halls. Sima Qian lived during the Han Dynasty himself. He saw the empire with his own eyes. And in his writing, we sometimes catch quiet glimpses of rulers searching for immortality. One emperor especially listened to these promises. His name was Emperor Wu of Han. He ruled from 141 BC to 87 BC, more than 50 years on the throne. Few rulers anywhere in the ancient world stayed in power so long. During his reign, the empire grew larger. Armies marched west into lands few Chinese had seen before. Envoys traveled across deserts and mountains. New trade roads opened. Silk cloth from Chinese looms began moving slowly across Central Asia. Horses from the western grasslands came east in return. The empire expanded, but time still moved forward. Even emperors grow old. Even emperors wake up some mornings and feel their hands tremble, slightly. A cough that does not leave. A weakness in the bones. A quiet reminder that the body is only flesh. For a ruler with endless wealth and power, that thought can be difficult to accept. So when strange men arrived at court claiming they had discovered the secret of eternal life, the emperor listened. Some of these men were scholars of Taoist philosophy. Others were experimenters. They heated minerals in sealed clay vessels. They ground bright red stones into powder. They watched metals melt and harden again. From these experiments came something they called an elixir. One important ingredient was a mineral called cinnabar. Cinnabar is bright red, almost the color of fresh paint. Inside it is mercury. When heated in a furnace, mercury separates into a shimmering liquid metal. To modern eyes, it looks beautiful, like a mirror that moves. But mercury is dangerous. Today we know it slowly harms the body. It damages nerves. It weakens organs. But ancient alchemists did not see poison. They saw transformation. In their minds, mercury behaved in a magical way. It could shift between solid and liquid. It flowed like water but shone like metal. If something so unusual existed in nature, perhaps it held hidden power. Perhaps drinking it in the right mixture would change the body. Perhaps it would make a person stronger, longer lived, maybe even immortal. So the emperor drank, not always large amounts, often small doses prepared carefully by court specialists. The mixtures might include powdered minerals, herbs, and heated metals. The emperor trusted that the men preparing these drinks understood what they were doing. They promised long life, and long life was the one thing even an emperor could not command. History gives us a quiet irony here. Many rulers who searched hardest for immortality seem to have died sooner than expected. Historians cannot always prove the cause. Ancient medical records are rarely precise, but the ingredients used in these elixirs are known. Mercury, lead, other heavy metals, substances that slowly poison the body. It is possible that the search for eternal life shortened many lives instead. A strange result, but a deeply human one, because the desire to live longer is not unusual. Every culture has searched for it in some form. Sacred springs, hidden herbs, magic stones. In the Han Dynasty, the search often passed through fire and metal, through alchemy. While these experiments happened inside the palace, the world outside continued quietly. Beyond the palace walls stood the capital city, a place called Chang'an. Chang'an was one of the largest cities anywhere on Earth at the time. Tall, rammed earth walls surrounded it. Great gates opened toward long, straight roads. Watchtowers stood at the corners. From above, the city followed a careful grid. Blocks of houses, official buildings, markets where merchants sold goods from across the empire. Inside those markets, people traded many things. Bundles of silk thread, clay jars of fermented soy paste, iron tools for farms, salt carried from distant inland lakes. Ox carts creaked slowly through the streets. Officials in long robes passed by on horseback. Messengers hurried between government offices. The city was busy, always moving, always full of noise. But even Chang'an was only one small part of the empire. The Han realm stretched across enormous distances, from the Korean peninsula in the east, across the Great Plains of the Yellow River, south into warmer lands of rice fields and forests, and west toward deserts that touched Central Asia. Traveling across the empire could take months, sometimes longer. Within those borders lived tens of millions of people. One Han census, taken in the year 2 AD, counted roughly 57 million. That number may not be exact, ancient records rarely are, but it still tells us something important. The Han Dynasty governed one of the largest populations in the ancient world. Yet almost none of those millions lived in palaces. Almost none drank strange elixirs. Most lived quiet lives in small villages. And tomorrow morning, like every morning, they would wake before sunrise. Their lives were shaped by the land beneath their feet, by weather, by soil, by the steady rhythm of planting and harvest, while emperors searched for ways to escape death. Farmers simply hoped the rains would come. And if we want to understand the real life of the Han Dynasty, we have to leave the palace for a while. We step away from the bronze cups, away from the alchemists and their furnaces. We follow the dusty roads leading out of Chang'an, roads that pass fields, streams, clusters of small houses made from packed earth, places where most people lived. Night is ending there now. The sky is turning pale. A rooster is about to call the village awake. And inside one of those quiet houses, someone is beginning to stir. Morning is coming. The village is quiet before dawn. Only a few faint sounds move through the darkness. A dog shifting in its sleep. A wooden shutter tapping softly in the breeze. Somewhere far away, water running through a narrow ditch beside a field. Above the houses, the sky is slowly turning grey. Most homes here are simple. Their walls are made from packed earth, pressed hard between wooden frames. The roofs are either thatch or clay tiles, depending on what the family can afford. Inside, the rooms are small. A raised platform may serve as both bed and sitting place. Straw mats cover the surface. A few clay bowls sit near the hearth. Smoke from last night's fire still hangs faintly in the air. It smells of ash, of millet straw, of burned wood. This kind of house was common across the Han countryside. Not grand, not comfortable by modern standards, but strong enough to last many seasons. Packed earth walls could keep out winter winds. Thick roofs held off the rain. In villages like this, families lived close together. Several houses might share a well. Children ran between doorways during the day. Neighbors borrowed tools. Life was woven tightly between households. The Han government knew about these villages. Officials counted them carefully. The state depended on them. Grain taxes from farmers fed the army in the cities. Labor from rural families helped build roads, canals, and walls. Without the countryside, the empire could not exist. At the top of that system stood the emperor. The ruler carried the title Son of Heaven. This title meant more than simple power. It suggested that the emperor served as a bridge between heaven and earth. If he ruled wisely, the world remained in harmony. If he ruled badly, disasters might follow: floods, drought, famine. Many people believed heaven itself could withdraw support from an unjust ruler. Because of this belief, emperors often took part in rituals meant to keep balance in the world. Some of these rituals were ancient sacrifices. Others involved prayer. And some, as we have seen, involved the strange experiments of alchemy. To the emperor and his court, these practices did not seem strange. They seemed hopeful. If the ruler lived longer, perhaps the empire would remain stable longer too. A long life could mean decades of peace, or so they hoped. Meanwhile, in villages across the empire, ordinary people lived with a very different sense of time. Their lives were shaped by the seasons: spring planting, summer growth, autumn harvest, winter repair. These cycles repeated again and again, not in the grand sweep of imperial history, but in small, practical ways. In northern China, many farmers planted millet. Millet was hardy. It could grow even in soil that was not especially rich. The grain was small and round. When cooked with water, it became a thick porridge. Simple, filling, reliable. Other regions grew wheat. Wheat could be ground into flour using heavy stone mills. From this flour, people made flat cakes or early forms of noodles. Rice grew farther south in wetter lands. There, the fields flooded easily, creating wide green paddies that reflected the sky. Each region learned to grow what the land allowed. Tools mattered too. During the Han Dynasty, iron tools became more common. Iron plows cut deeper into soil than older wooden ones. This helped farmers turn heavy earth and plant more efficiently. Oxen pulled the plows slowly across the fields, step by step, row by row. The sound of metal scraping soil became one of the quiet rhythms of rural life. Not every family owned an ox. Some borrowed animals from neighbors. Others pulled smaller plows themselves. Farming was hard work no matter how it was done. But the harvest it produced fed the entire empire. In cities like Chang'an, officials debated important policies. One famous debate happened in 81 BC. Scholars argued about whether the government should control industries like salt and iron. These discussions were recorded in a text called the Discourses on Salt and Iron. The debate might sound technical, but the results affected everyday people: taxes, tools, prices in the markets. All of these could change depending on decisions made far away in the capital. Most villagers never saw those debates. They simply felt the results. A slightly higher tax, a new tool becoming available, or a shortage when supplies ran thin. Empire often worked like that. Large decisions drifting slowly down into small lives. Still, for many families, daily life stayed focused on simpler things. Repairing fences, feeding animals, grinding grain, children helping where they could. Old grandparents sitting in the doorway watching the day unfold. The empire might stretch across mountains and deserts, but here in the village, the world felt much smaller. The fields nearby, the road leading to the nearest market town, the well where neighbors gathered each morning. Beyond that, the world faded into stories. Stories of distant cities, stories of armies marching west, stories of the emperor himself. Most people would never see the emperor. They would only hear about him. A figure far away in Chang'an. A man who spoke with heaven. A ruler who sometimes drank strange silver liquids in the hope of living forever. Meanwhile, the villagers faced a simpler truth. The sun would rise soon, work would begin, and like every morning before it, the day would start with small familiar tasks. Inside one house, someone stirs. A hand reaches for a bundle of straw beside the hearth. Soon, the first fire of the morning will be lit, and the quiet rhythm of a Han village will begin again. Because before the plow touches the soil, before the markets open, before the empire fully wakes, there is always the slow beginning of morning. The first sound is the rooster, a sharp call cutting through the grey morning. Then another rooster answers somewhere farther away. Soon a few dogs bark. A door slides open. The village begins to wake. Inside one house, a farmer sits up slowly. The room is dim. Only a faint strip of light shows beneath the door. He pulls a simple hemp robe around his shoulders. The air is cool. Nights on the northern plains often are, even in warmer seasons. The packed earth floor still holds the chill of the night. The house is quiet, except for the small movements of other people waking. A child turns under a blanket. Someone coughs softly. The farmer reaches toward the hearth. Last night's ashes are still there. He pushes them gently with a stick. Sometimes a spark remains hidden beneath the grey powder. If not, he will start a new fire with flint and dry straw. Fire is important in a Han household. It cooks food, it warms the room, it boils water for tea or porridge. Without it, the morning cannot truly begin. Soon a thin thread of smoke curls upward. The first flame appears. A clay pot is placed over the heat. Water inside begins to warm slowly. This moment, quiet, ordinary, almost unnoticed, was repeated millions of times across the Han Empire. While emperors consulted alchemists, while scholars debated policy in Chang'an, families in villages simply started their day. One fire, one pot, one small house at a time. Most people in the Han world lived like this. Not as nobles, not as merchants, but as farmers. Historians sometimes say that nearly 9 out of every 10 people in early imperial China worked the land. That number may not be exact, but it tells us something true. The countryside held the real strength of the empire. Fields surrounded nearly every village. Some belonged to small family households. Others were owned by wealthy landholders and rented out to tenant farmers. In good years, the harvest was enough to feed the family and pay taxes. In bad years, things became difficult. Drought, flood, insects. Any of these could damage crops. When that happened, the year grew long and uncertain. The Han government tried to keep grain flowing through the empire. officials built granaries to store extra harvests. In times of shortage, these reserves could be released to help prevent famine. Some emperors took this responsibility very seriously. Even Emperor Wu of Han, known for his wars and expansions, also oversaw systems meant to stabilize the grain supply. Empire survived not only through armies, but through food. Back in the village, the clay pot now begins to steam. Inside is a simple meal, millet, perhaps the most common breakfast in northern China at the time. Millet cooks quickly when boiled with water. The result is a thick porridge, warm, plain, but filling. A wooden ladle stirs the pot slowly. Children sit nearby waiting. A grandmother may already be awake, combing her long grey hair with a simple wooden comb. Hair mattered in Han culture. People rarely cut it short. Instead, they tied it into knots or buns. Men often wrapped their hair beneath cloth caps. Women used pins or ribbons. Even simple households took care with appearance. Outside, the sky grows brighter. The eastern horizon shows pale gold. Fields stretch beyond the village. Some are planted. Others wait for the next season's work. Narrow footpaths wind between them. Oxen stand near wooden posts chewing quietly. They will soon be harnessed to plows. Agriculture during the Han Dynasty had already become fairly advanced for its time. Iron tools were common in many regions. These tools were stronger than older bronze ones. They lasted longer and cut deeper into soil. The government even controlled large iron industries for part of the dynasty. This control became the subject of long debates among scholars and officials. The discussions were recorded in a text called the Discourses on Salt and Iron. In those debates, officials argued about how much power the state should hold over essential goods, iron tools, salt for preserving food, resources that every household depended on. But here in the village, those debates feel very far away. The farmer finishes his bowl of millet. The children eat quietly. Soon the workday will begin. A wooden door opens. Cool morning air flows into the house. Outside, the world is now fully awake. Neighbors step into the lane between houses. Someone carries a bucket toward the well. Another man adjusts the harness on his ox. A woman shakes out a woven mat in the sunlight. The village moves slowly but steadily. Far beyond the horizon, the emperor's palace still stands inside the great city of Chang'an. Perhaps today the court will hold ceremonies. Perhaps an alchemist will present a new formula for eternal life. Perhaps another cup of shining metal will be prepared. But those distant events will change very little in this small place. Here, the real story of the Han Dynasty unfolds quietly. In fields, in kitchens, in markets, in the steady rhythm of work repeated year after year. Because while emperors search for ways to live forever, most people simply try to live well enough to see the next harvest. The sun now rises fully over the fields. Light spreads across the land. Tools are lifted. Oxen begin to move. And across the Han Empire, millions of ordinary days are beginning. To understand that world, we must step closer to it. Closer to the roads. Closer to the villages. Closer to the vast landscape that shaped every life within the empire. So let us leave the small house behind for a moment and walk the long road toward the great capital itself, toward the walls of Chang'an, toward the crowded streets of the Han world. Because to truly see this empire, we must first see the world it was built upon. The road to the capital is long and pale with dust. It cuts across the plain in a wide brown ribbon. Wagon wheels have pressed deep tracks into the earth over many years. Hooves have hardened the soil until it feels almost like stone beneath the feet. In the early morning, travelers move slowly along this road. Ox carts creak forward. A few merchants lead pack animals carrying bundles wrapped in cloth. Farmers walk beside loads of grain meant for the markets of the capital. Everyone seems to move at the same steady pace. Not hurried, not slow, just the rhythm of long travel. Ahead, the walls of Chang'an rise from the flat land. From a distance, they appear almost like a low mountain ridge. The walls are built from packed earth. Workers press layer after layer of soil into wooden frames. Each layer hardened under weight and time until the surface became dense and strong. The result is massive. The outer wall stretches for miles. Along the top stand watchtowers spaced at careful intervals. Guards patrol those towers day and night. From that height, they can see the countryside spreading far beyond the city. Anyone approaching the capital can be watched long before they reach the gates. As the road draws closer to the city, the number of travelers grows. More carts appear, more animals, more people walking toward the gates. A farmer pushes a small wagon loaded with sacks of millet. Two merchants guide mules carrying long bundles of silk cloth. An official passes by on horseback, his robe hanging neatly over the saddle. Dust rises around their feet and slowly drifts away on the morning air. Chang'an was one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Historians still debate its exact population. Some estimates suggest several 100,000 people may have lived inside the walls. Even if the number was smaller, the city would still have felt enormous. For a traveler coming from a small farming village, the sight of Chang'an must have been overwhelming. Wide avenues, crowded markets, great halls of government, and somewhere deep within the city, the imperial palace itself. The design of the city followed careful planning. Chang'an was built on a grid. Long straight roads crossed one another at right angles. Large districts divided the city into sections. Some districts held government offices. Others were filled with homes, and certain areas were reserved for trade. Order mattered in the Han world. Officials believed that a well-organized city reflected a well-ordered empire. The gates open each morning at sunrise. Guards inspect the incoming travelers. Carts pass slowly through the entrance. Animals step across the threshold between countryside and city. Once inside, the noise grows louder. Markets were the heart of daily life in Chang'an. Two great markets served the city, the East Market and the West Market. Each one was surrounded by its own set of walls. The gates of the market did not stay open all day. Instead, trade followed a strict schedule. At the start of the day, a bell rang to announce that the market was open. Merchants entered. Stalls were arranged. Goods were displayed. Later, another bell signaled the closing hour. The gates shut. Trading stopped. Order returned to the streets. Within the market walls, the air filled with many sounds. Wooden stalls creaked as they were assembled. Merchants spoke quietly with customers. Scales clinked as weights were placed beside goods. The smell of food drifted through the lanes. Soy paste, steamed grain, cooked vegetables. Merchants sold many different items. Bundles of silk thread, clay bowls and jars, iron tools shaped for farming, salt packed into rough blocks, dried herbs used for medicine. Every object had its place. Every sale was watched. Officials walked through the market inspecting weights and measures. If a merchant cheated customers, punishment could follow. The government believed fairness in trade protected the stability of the empire. Beyond the market stood the offices of the Han administration. Rows of wooden buildings filled these districts. Inside them worked clerks and scribes. Their task was simple but endless. They wrote. Paper had not yet become common in the early Han period. Instead, documents were written on bamboo slips. Each slip was a narrow strip of wood. Words were brushed onto its surface using ink. Many slips were tied together with cords to form a bundle. A single report might contain dozens of them. Officials stored these bundles carefully in archives. Year after year, the records grew. From these documents, historians later reconstructed the story of the dynasty. One of the scholars who helped preserve that story was Bangu. Bangu lived during the 1st century AD. He helped compile a great historical work known as the Book of Han. The book recorded events of the dynasty in great detail: wars, taxes, population counts, the lives of officials. Through his writing, we still glimpse how the empire functioned nearly 2,000 years ago. Yet even these careful records rarely describe the daily lives of ordinary people. Farmers appear mostly as numbers in tax registers. Craftsmen appear when tools are counted. Merchants appear when laws regulate their trade. But these people fill the streets every day. Carts roll toward the markets carrying grain from the countryside. Farmers walked beside their wagons wearing rough hemp clothing. Their sleeves were loose, cloth belts wrapped around their waists. Some wore simple straw sandals. Others walked in cloth shoes stitched at home. Their clothes were plain, but practical. Food was the reason they came. Cities could not feed themselves. The population of Chang'an depended entirely on supplies arriving from nearby villages: millet, wheat, rice from the southern provinces, beans, vegetables. Everything moved slowly along the road system toward the capital. Those roads were maintained through labor required by the state. Each year, many men were called to perform corvée labor. This meant temporary service for the government. They might repair roads, dig canals, build defensive walls, or transport supplies for the army. Such labor could last several weeks each year. It was one of the many ways ordinary households supported the empire. Trade did not stop at the city gates. Goods also traveled far beyond the borders of Han China. One important figure in opening those distant connections was Zhang Qian. During the reign of Emperor Wu, Zhang Qian was sent west on a diplomatic mission. His journey lasted more than a decade. He crossed deserts and mountain ranges. He encountered unfamiliar cultures and powerful nomadic societies. When he returned to China, he described lands rich with horses and trade goods. His reports encouraged further contact with Western regions. Over time, these routes formed part of what later historians would call the Silk Road. But trade along these routes moved slowly. A bolt of silk might travel through many hands before reaching distant markets. A merchant in Chang'an might sell cloth to another trader. That trader might carry it west to the edge of the empire. From there, it might pass again and again between caravans, step by step, region by region, until it reached lands the Chinese themselves rarely saw. If quiet journeys into the past help you rest, you can stay for more nights like this. Pause. Anyway, the city continues its steady motion. Officials walk through government halls. Students study the teachings of Confucian philosophers. Craftsmen shape wood and metal inside small workshops. Life in Chang'an follows a rhythm guided by rules, schedules, and long traditions. Yet beyond the walls, the countryside remains the true foundation of the empire. Fields stretch across the plains. Water channels carry irrigation through narrow ditches. Small villages stand beside the roads. Each one holds a handful of families, neighbors who share tools, children who run between houses, old men sitting in doorways watching the road. The empire may appear vast from the perspective of its rulers, but in villages like these, life feels smaller. The nearest well, the nearby fields, the market town a few miles away. Beyond that, the world becomes distant. Stories carried by travelers, rumors from the capital, whispers about wars on the frontier. Somewhere far away, the emperor still sits in his palace. Alchemists may still search for ways to grant him eternal life. But here, the villagers are concerned with simpler things: rain, soil, the health of their animals, the next harvest. The sun now climbs higher in the sky. Markets grow louder, roads grow busier, and across the Han Empire, millions of people continue the quiet work that keeps the world moving. But in one small village, the morning is only just beginning. A family finishes its simple breakfast. Tools wait beside the door. The day's work is about to begin, and that is where we will go next. Into the slow, familiar rhythm of a Han morning, the rooster calls before the sun appears. Its voice cuts through the grey air above the village, thin at first, then stronger. Another rooster answers from farther down the lane, then another from behind a low wall near the well. The sound moves from house to house, as if the whole village is being nudged awake by the same small, stubborn bird. Inside a house made of packed earth, a man opens his eyes. The room is still dim. Morning has not yet entered fully. It waits outside the wooden door, pressing a faint strip of pale light under the threshold. The air inside is cool. The warmth from last night's fire has mostly faded. Smoke still hangs in the room, but only lightly now, mixed with the smell of straw, clay, and old ash. He lies still for a moment, not because he is lazy, because waking takes time. It did then, just as it does now. Around him, the rest of the household sleeps in the hush before dawn. His wife lies beside the younger child. Near the wall, on another, Matt, his older son, has twisted his blanket halfway off in the night. In the corner, his mother sleeps lightly, as older people often do. She is not fully asleep now, not fully awake either, just listening. This is not a large house. Most Han farmhouses were not. A family might live in only one or two main rooms, with a small yard outside and perhaps a place for tools, grain jars, or animals. Walls were often made by pressing damp earth between wooden frames until it dried hard. It was a good building method, cheap, strong, quiet. In winter, it could keep out the wind. In summer, it held the night's coolness a little longer. The roof might be thatch, or tile if the family had more means. Most did not. The man pushes himself upright. His blanket slides from his shoulders. The chill comes at once. He reaches for his robe, shakes it open, and wraps it around himself before standing. The cloth is hemp, rough against the skin, plain to look at. Useful, that mattered more than softness. Silk was known all across the Han world. It shimmered in noble houses. It traveled west along trade routes. It lay folded in market stalls in great cities. But here, in the village, silk was mostly something other people wore. Hemp did the work. He places his feet on the hard earth floor. Cold. That too would have been familiar. Mornings in the north could bite even when the day ahead would turn mild. The body learned the lesson quickly. Wake, dress, move, get the fire going. He crosses the room without speaking. There is no need. The house knows its morning rhythm. The hearth sits low and simple near the middle of the room. A clay-lined fire pit. Dark ash from last night still resting in it. Beside it sits a bundle of straw, some small sticks, a few thicker pieces of wood saved for later, and the tools for making flame. He kneels down, leans close, and gently stirs the ash with a thin stick. Sometimes a coal survives the night, a tiny ember hidden under grey dust, a small red eye. If it is there, the work is easy, a breath, a little straw, a little care, and morning begins. Today, the ashes are almost cold, almost. He bends closer. There, a dim glow, small enough to miss if he were tired or careless. He cups his hand around it and blows softly. The red deepens. A thread of smoke rises. He lays a pinch of dry straw against it and waits. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the straw darkens, curls, and takes. The flame is weak at first, then steadier. He feeds it a little more, not too much. A fire can be spoiled by too much kindness. By the time the first small flames have found the twigs, his mother is awake. She does not speak right away. She sits up slowly on her mat and pulls her robe close around her shoulders. Her hair, long and pale now, has partly slipped loose in the night. She reaches for a wooden comb beside her bedroll and begins to draw it through her hair with patient strokes. Hair mattered in Han China. That was not a small thing. Confucian teaching held that the body, including the hair, came from one's parents and should be treated with care. Men and women alike usually wore their hair long. Men tied it up beneath caps or cloth wraps. Women pinned and bound it in many forms depending on age, means, and region. Even in a poor household, people tried to keep themselves orderly. The day began, in part, by putting the body back into shape. The old woman combs, slowly, carefully. A daily act of neatness in a world that could be rough. Now the man's wife wakes. She opens her eyes to the glow of the fire and sits up without surprise. This too is part of the rhythm. She folds her blanket, adjusts her robe, and rises. Her sleeves are plain. Her hands are already marked by work, though the day has hardly started. She moves to the water jar near the wall, lifts the lid, and listens to the slosh inside. Enough for breakfast. Enough, perhaps, until someone goes to the well. She pours water into a clay pot and sets it over the fire. The pot settles onto its stand with a dull sound. Soon there is the faintest tremble from the water inside. Outside, the village is beginning to breathe. A gate creaks somewhere nearby. A dog shakes itself awake. A man coughs in the lane. A bucket knocks once against the stone lip of the well. These are not loud sounds. They do not break the morning. They fill it. The younger child wakes next. He sits up too fast, hair wild, eyes not yet open all the way. For a moment he seems unsure where he is, which is a feeling children have in every age. Then he sees the fire and the pot, hears the adults moving, and remembers the world. The older boy wakes more slowly. He turns over first, blinks, pulls the blanket aside. He is old enough now to know there will be work waiting. The body learns that too. No one lingers long. This is not the kind of life that allows for it. Breakfast will be millet. That is no surprise either. In the north of Han China, millet was the grain of ordinary life. It grew well in the low soil of the northern plains. It asked less water than rice. It was dependable, not fancy, not fragrant, not a feast, but dependable. And for most people, dependable food was better than fine food. The wife measures the grain by hand, a scoop from the storage jar, then another smaller one. Millet falls into the warming water with a dry, soft sound. She stirs it with a wooden ladle, round and round. The grains drift, sink, soften. Steam begins to rise. In richer homes, there could be more choices. Wheat cakes, rice, better sauces, maybe meat on a good day. In cities, cooks could prepare all sorts of things. Han tombs and texts tell us of noodles, dumplings of early kinds, broths, stews, dried meats, fish, and preserved foods. But in a village house, on an ordinary morning, there is no need to reach for the splendid examples. Most people began simply. Porridge, grain, some things pickled, perhaps a bit of bean paste, enough to carry the body into the first half of the day. That is the important thing, not pleasure, steadiness. The grandmother has finished combing her hair. Now she ties it back. The children dress fully. The older boy wraps his belt twice around his robe and knots it with the speed of practice. The younger needs help. He always pulls one sleeve crooked. His mother fixes it without comment. She smooths the cloth at his shoulders and turns him around with a hand at the back. The older child goes to the doorway and slides it open a finger's width. Grey light enters, cold too. He shuts it part way again. Not yet. The pot thickens on the fire. The wife stirs and stirs. Millet porridge asks for patience more than skill. The smell is mild, but warming. Grain and steam, smoke and clay, morning in one breath. Beside the hearth, another small dish is set out. Pickled greens perhaps, saved from earlier days. Or fermented bean paste, dark and strong enough that only a little is needed. Salt mattered in every old kitchen. So did any method that could make food keep longer. The Han state knew this well. Salt was important enough to argue over tax and control. Great men debated it in court. But here in the house it is much simpler. Salt means food lasts. Food that lasts means winter is less frightening. At last the porridge is ready. The wife lifts the pot carefully with cloth around her hands and ladles the thick grain into bowls. Clay bowls, plain and sturdy. Nothing delicate here. Each bowl is passed to waiting hands. The family gathers closer to the fire, knees bent, robes tucked in. For a little while, no one moves much. They eat. The first mouthful is hot, the second better. The children blow on theirs because they are told to, though the younger forgets and makes a face when the steam catches him. The grandmother eats steadily, not quickly. The man finishes first. He always does. The body that will soon be behind the plough or working a hoe knows what it needs. This is not a cheerful breakfast in the modern sense. No chatter filling the room, no grand spread. But there is comfort in it. A warm bowl in cold hands, a family close together, a fire restored, the day not yet heavy. We do not know every detail of every Han morning. That is worth saying plainly. History gives fragments, not full rooms. Archaeology shows us house foundations, cooking pots, wells, storage jars, tomb models, murals, bamboo texts, and tools. Writings from the time tell us about proper conduct, taxes, farming, and household values. From these pieces a picture forms, not perfect, but clear enough in outline. And the outline feels familiar. People woke early, they lit fires, they dressed children, they ate what they had, they stepped into the day together. One later Han voice that still lingers around the household is Ban Zhao. Banzhao was a scholar and writer of the Eastern Han period. She is best known for a text often called Lessons for Women. It sets out ideals for conduct within the home: humility, diligence, respect, care. The book reflects the values that shaped elite thinking in the dynasty. Though everyday life in a village could be messier and more practical than any moral text admits, still, its presence matters. It reminds us that the Han household wasn't seen as separate from the state or from learning. Family order was thought to support social order. A well-run home fit into a well-run village, a well-run village into a well-run county, and so on, all the way upward, at least in theory, to the emperor himself. That was the dream. The bowls in this room are more real than the dream. When breakfast is done, the work does not wait. The wife scrapes the last of the porridge from the pot. The grandmother wipes out a bowl with practiced care so little is wasted. Water is too useful to spend freely on washing. A small rinse, a cloth, the bowls are set aside. The younger child is sent to bring in more straw for the fire later. The older boy takes 2 buckets and heads toward the well. In a village, morning traffic gathers there quickly. Women, boys, old men, all arriving with jars and poles, exchanging short words while the day is still cool. The man steps outside into the yard. The light has changed. Sun now touches the tops of the low walls and catches on the pale dust of the lane. The village is fully awake. One neighbor is already fastening a yoke. Another is mending a basket before taking it to the field. A woman shakes a woven mat free of husks and dust. Chickens scratch at the ground near a doorway. A pig noses at a fence post. Somewhere behind one of the houses, someone is grinding grain on a stone quern with the steady back and forth sound that belongs to morning as much as the rooster did. The air smells of smoke from many hearths, and damp soil, and animals, and the first warmth of sunlight reaching the ground. From the yard, the fields are visible beyond the last houses. Not all at once, only in pieces between walls and trees and storage sheds, but enough. Narrow strips of land, furrows, green growth in one patch, bare earth in another. Each piece connected to a household's hope, worry, memory, and labor. A bad season would be felt here before it was written anywhere in an official record. For the people who worked this land, the empire was both near and far. Near in taxes, near in labor demands, near in law, far in ceremony, far in palace walls, far in the strange experiments of emperors and alchemists. The field was nearer than all of that. The field always won. The man checks the harness for the ox, leather and wood. Worn, repaired, still good enough. The animal stands with the calm patience of creatures that already know the pattern of the day. The older boy returns with water and sets the buckets down. The younger child is told not to chase the chickens. He does anyway. His grandmother calls him back with one word and he stops. Small scenes, almost nothing. And yet, this is where a life is made. Mourning in Han China was not grand. It was practical. Layer by layer, task by task, it pulled the household from darkness into motion. Wake, dress, comb the hair, find the ember, boil the grain, eat, fetch the water, lift the tools, open the door, step outside. Across the empire, millions of people would have known this order in their bones. Not because anyone had to explain it, because repetition had already done the teaching. Yesterday taught it, and the day before that, and the year before that. In the capital, clerks unrolled records, and officials spoke of policy. On distant roads, merchants led animals toward the markets of Chang'an. At the frontiers, soldiers watched dry horizons. And somewhere in a palace, perhaps, a ruler still wondered how to outlast death. But in the village, the morning had reached its last quiet moment. Breakfast was over. The bowls were empty. The tools were waiting. The man lifts a hoe from beside the wall. His son reaches for a smaller one. The ox shifts its weight. Neighbors move along the path in the same direction, each carrying the shape of the day in wood and iron. The house behind them settles into a softer kind of work now, sweeping, mending, heating more water, watching younger children, sorting grain. Work inside and work outside. Both necessary, both endless in their own way. The sun rises higher. The coolness begins to thin. And the true labor of the Han world, the long repeating labor that fed the empire and wore down the hands of ordinary people, is about to begin. Now the fields are waiting. The ox leans forward. Its shoulders press against the wooden yoke. The leather straps tighten slowly. Behind it, the iron plow blade sinks into the soil. The earth opens. A long, dark line appears in the field. The farmer walks behind the plow. Both hands hold the wooden handles. His arms remain steady while the blade cuts deeper into the ground. Step, step, step. The ox moves. The soil turns. Plowing is slow work. It has always been slow work. There is no hurry that improves it. If the animal moves too quickly, the blade jumps free of the soil. If the farmer pushes too hard, the furrow becomes uneven. So the pace stays steady. Step, step, step. Across the Han countryside, thousands of farmers begin their day this same way. In wide plains beside the Yellow River, in narrow valley fields between hills, in small plots carved into the edges of villages. Everywhere the same quiet movement appears. Ox, plow, farmer, soil turning beneath iron. The soil here is pale yellow when dry. When the blade cuts through it, darker earth rises from below. This region is known for low soil, fine dust carried by ancient winds long ago. Layer upon layer settled across northern China over thousands of years. The result is fertile land, but fragile. Rain can wash it away. Floods can carve deep channels through it. Farmers must work carefully. The land feeds them, but the land can also disappear. The ox reaches the edge of the field. The farmer lifts the plow, turns the animal slowly, then lowers the blade again. Another row begins. Nearby, another farmer works with a hoe. He bends, raises the tool, brings it down into the soil. The blade cuts through weeds growing between rows of young plants. He moves forward one small step, then again, then again. Each movement looks nearly identical to the last, but each movement matters. Weeds steal water, weeds steal sunlight. Remove them early and the crop grows stronger. Ignore them and the harvest grows thin. The sun rises higher. Light spreads across the field. More workers appear along the edges of the land. A woman carries a basket filled with seedlings. Another kneels to press young plants into damp soil. Children walk behind them carrying bundles of tools. Every pair of hands adds something. During the Han Dynasty, farming techniques slowly improved. One important development was the wider use of iron tools. Iron plows could cut deeper than wooden ones. They lasted longer. They handled heavier soil. The Han government sometimes controlled iron production to ensure tools remained available. Iron mines and workshops produced blades for farms across the empire. One official connected to farming reform was Zhao Guo. He encouraged farmers to try a method known today as the alternating field system. In this method, crops were planted in separated rows with space between them. The empty rows allowed farmers to cultivate the soil more easily. Weeds could be removed, moisture could be preserved. The plants grew stronger with less competition. It was not a complicated invention, just a small change in spacing. But small improvements matter when millions of people farm the land. The farmer guiding the ox wipes sweat from his forehead. The sun has climbed far enough now to warm the air. Dust sticks lightly to his robe. The ox breathes steadily. Its work is patient. Animals used in farming learned these routines quickly. They knew the pace. They knew the turns. They knew when the plow would lift and when it would cut again. Another row ends. The farmer turns the ox once more. The plow sinks into the soil. The pattern continues. Not all work in a Han village happened in the fields. Inside houses and small workshops, other forms of labor continued quietly. One of the most famous was silk production. Silk began with silkworms, small white caterpillars that fed on mulberry leaves. Families raised them carefully inside wooden trays. The worms ate constantly. Leaves had to be gathered every day. When the worms were ready, they spun cocoons made of fine thread. Those cocoons held the beginning of silk cloth. Workers unwound the threads carefully in warm water. Many threads combined into one stronger strand. Then the thread could be woven into fabric. A loom stands in one house near the edge of the village. A woman sits beside it. Her hands move steadily. The loom creaks softly with each motion. Thread passes back and forth, back and forth. Slowly the cloth grows wider. Silk weaving required patience, hours of steady movement, but the result was valuable. Silk from Han China eventually traveled far beyond the empire, across deserts, across mountains, into lands the farmers here would never see. Other workers shaped clay. The village potter kneads wet earth beside his wheel. His foot turns the wheel slowly. His hands guide the clay upward. A bowl begins to form, then another. Clay jars will hold grain. Clay pots will cook food. Clay vessels will store water. The potter works quietly. The spinning wheel hums. His fingers shape the same forms again and again. At the blacksmith's workshop, another rhythm fills the air. Iron glows orange in the heat of a small furnace. A hammer rises, then falls. Clang. The hammer rises again. Clang. Each strike reshapes the metal slightly. Plow blades, knives, hinges, tools that will soon return to the fields. Even children take part in the work of the village. Young boys guide goats or chickens away from gardens. They gather sticks for firewood. They carry messages between houses. Girls help with grinding grain and preparing food. The work is rarely heavy, but it is constant. Every household depends on many small tasks being done. Back in the field, the farmer reaches the end of another row. The ox stops. The plow lifts. He looks across the land. Many rows remain, but the day is still young. Work continues. Step, step, step. The ox moves. The soil turns. The rhythm repeats. And across the Han Empire, millions of people move through the same quiet labor that holds the entire world together. The field grows warmer as the sun climbs. Morning coolness fades slowly from the soil. The farmer feels it first in his hands, then along his neck where the collar of his robe rests against the skin. The ox breathes heavier now, though it continues its slow, patient pull. The plow moves forward. The earth turns. Another row, then another. From a distance, the field begins to show its pattern. dark furrows stretch across the land like long brushstrokes on pale ground. Each line marks the passing of the plough. Each line prepares the soil for seed. Fields like this spread across enormous distances during the Han Dynasty. The empire relied on them. Grain moved from villages to towns, from towns to cities, from cities to distant armies guarding the frontiers. The path of a single harvest could travel hundreds of miles before it was eaten. But the beginning always looked like this. One farmer, one ox, one plough. Nearby, another group works in a patch already planted. The young shoots are only a few inches tall. Thin green blades rise from the soil in careful rows. A woman kneels between them. Her fingers move quickly. She pulls small weeds from the ground and drops them into a basket. Pull, drop, drop. Weeding takes patience. Weeds grow quickly when the weather warms. If they remain too long, they steal water and nutrients meant for the crop. So the work must be repeated often. Hands moving slowly down each row. Eyes watching for small leaves that do not belong. A child follows behind her carrying the basket. When it fills, he empties it beside the edge of the field. The weeds will dry there in the sun. Later, they may be burned. Even waste plants return to the cycle of work. Ash enriches the soil. Nothing is entirely lost. Further down the path, a narrow irrigation ditch carries water toward another field. Water flows quietly along its shallow channel. Farmers guide the flow using small wooden gates or packed earth barriers. A shovel lifts soil. A channel opens. Water spreads across the rows. Irrigation does not always require large canals. Sometimes it is only careful direction, a small trench, a controlled stream, enough to keep the roots alive. The sound of water mixes with other sounds of labor, the scrape of hoes, the soft call of farmers guiding their animals, the rustle of wind passing through early crops. From far away comes the dull ring of metal striking metal. A blacksmith at work. In the village workshop, the blacksmith lifts his hammer again. Iron rests glowing on the anvil. Clang. The hammer falls. Clang. The metal flattens slightly. Another strike shapes it further. Each blow echoes against the wooden beams of the small building. The blacksmith works steadily. The forge breathes heat into the room. Iron tools must be repaired often. Plough blades dull against stones. Hoes bend under pressure. Knives chip along their edges. Without the blacksmith, the fields would soon fall silent. In another yard, the potter tends his kiln. Clay vessels stand arranged carefully inside the firing chamber. Bowls, cooking pots, storage jars. The kiln glows faintly through small vents in its side. Fire inside transforms soft clay into hardened ceramic. The potter waits. Firing takes time. Too much heat cracks the vessels. Too little leaves them weak. Patience shapes clay as surely as hands do. Back in the fields, the farmer pauses. He lifts the plough blade from the earth and wipes sweat from his brow. The ox stands quietly beside him. Both need a moment. Not a long rest, just enough to breathe. The farmer looks across the land. He sees neighbors working their own plots. Some fields already planted, others still waiting for the plough. Small figures move slowly across the landscape, each person repeating the same movements. Each family tending its own narrow strips of soil. Together, these fields form the base of the empire. Yet from the ground, they look simple, just people and land. The farmer drinks from a small water gourd. Cool water settles the dryness in his throat. He replaces the stopper and returns the gourd to its place on the fence post. The rest ends. Work resumes. The ox leans forward again. The plough enters the soil, step, step, step. Far away, officials in the capital record taxes and shipments. They calculate grain supplies. They debate policies about salt and iron. But here the empire feels distant. Here the work is immediate. Soil must be turned. Crops must grow. Families must eat. The sun climbs toward midday. Shadows shorten. Heat begins to rise from the earth. Workers move a little slower now. Not from laziness, from experience. Too much effort under strong sun drains the body quickly. Better to pace the work, steady, careful, enduring. At the edge of the village, smoke begins to rise again from several houses. Thin grey columns lift into the sky. Cooking fires are being lit once more. The smell spreads slowly across the fields. Warm grain, boiled vegetables, perhaps a small pot of soup. The scent travels farther than the sound of voices. It drifts along the paths, across the irrigation channels, over the rows of young crops. Eventually, it reaches the farmer guiding the plough. He notices it immediately. So does the ox. Animals sense the pause in work just as humans do. Midday meals were often simple. A bowl of grain, maybe leftover vegetables. But after hours of labor, even simple food carries great comfort. The farmer reaches the final row for the morning. The plough lifts from the earth. The ox stops. The field stands quiet behind them. Dark, furrows stretch across the soil, ready for planting. Tools rest against fence posts. Hoes lie beside baskets. Workers wipe dust from their robes. Some stretch their backs slowly. Others gather water jars. The morning's labor has ended. For now, across the village doors open. Clay pots sit above fresh flames. Food waits inside, because after the long rhythm of work, there is the quieter rhythm of eating. And soon, in homes across the Han countryside, families will gather again around the warmth of the hearth, where the smell of food fills the room, where bowls are passed from hand to hand, where even the hardest day pauses for a little while. And that pause begins at the table. The smell of cooking reaches the fields before the people do. It drifts slowly through the warm midday air, a thin ribbon of scent carried on faint wind across rows of young crops and dry soil. Smoke rises from village roofs. Small cooking fires have been lit again. The farmer lifts the plough from the ground and guides the ox toward home. The animal walks slowly along the narrow path between fields. Its hooves press soft prints into the dust. The farmer carries the plough across one shoulder. Other neighbors walk the same path. Some carry hoes, others balance baskets on poles. The morning's labor has ended for a little while. The village feels quieter at midday. Work pauses. Tools rest against walls. Animals stand in shade beside fences. Doors open as families return inside. In one house, a clay pot sits above a small fire. Steam rises from beneath the lid. Inside, the pot grain has been simmering slowly. Millet again today. Millet most days. The grain softens in hot water until it becomes thick porridge. Plain food, but warm and filling. The woman of the house lifts the lid. Steam escapes into the room. She stirs the pot with a wooden ladle. The porridge has thickened just enough, not too thin, not too stiff. She lowers the flame slightly by pulling a few pieces of wood away from the fire. Cooking in the Han countryside rarely required complicated tools. A hearth, a clay pot, sometimes an iron tripod to support the pot above the fire. These simple things were enough to prepare most meals. Clay vessels discovered in Han archaeological sites show signs of heavy use. Blackened bases from years above open flames, scratches from wooden ladles. Food leaves marks behind even after centuries. The farmer steps inside the house. He sets the plow near the wall. His robe carries the smell of soil and sun. Dust clings lightly to his sleeves. The ox remains outside beneath a simple shade. Animals eat later. People eat first. Bowls are arranged near the hearth. Simple bowls made of clay. Some wealthier homes use lacquer bowls, smooth and shining with layers of hardened sap. But clay served most families well enough. Strong, easy to make, easy to replace. The porridge is ladled into bowls. Each bowl filled slowly. Steam curls upward into the dim room. The family gathers again near the hearth. Morning work has made them hungry. Meals in the Han Dynasty depended heavily on grain. In the northern regions, millet remained the most common staple. Wheat also grew in many fields. Ground wheat could become flour. From flour came flat cakes or early forms of noodles. These foods appeared more often in towns and cities where milling stones worked constantly. In the countryside, millet still ruled the table. South of the great Yangtze River, the diet looked different. Rice grew well in the warmer, wetter lands. Flooded paddies stretched across wide valleys. Farmers planted rice, seedlings in shallow water. When harvested, rice provided a softer grain than millet, but transporting rice north over long distances was difficult. So most people ate what their region produced. The bowls of porridge pass from hand to hand. The younger child blows across the surface before taking a careful bite. The grandmother eats slowly. The farmer finishes quickly. The body that spends hours in the fields learns not to delay when food arrives. Beside the bowls sits a small dish of vegetables, pickled cabbage perhaps, or fermented beans. Preserving food mattered greatly in ancient households. Fresh vegetables did not last long without refrigeration, so families developed many ways to keep food edible: salt, fermentation, drying. These methods allowed vegetables to last through colder seasons. Soybeans played an important role in many Han kitchens. When fermented, soybeans produced strong pastes and sauces. Early forms of soy sauce already existed, though flavor was salty and deep. A small amount could change the taste of an entire meal. Even a bowl of plain grain felt richer with a little fermented paste. Garlic and onions also appeared in many dishes. They grew easily, they stored well, and they added flavor to simple foods. Archaeologists studying ancient seeds and plant remains have found evidence of these vegetables in Han sites. The everyday diet left traces beneath the soil. Meat appeared less often on the tables of ordinary farmers. Animals were valuable. Pigs might be raised for slaughter during festivals. Chickens laid eggs more often than they became meals. Ducks sometimes appeared near ponds and rivers. But for most days, grain and vegetables formed the center of the meal. Meat was a luxury. In wealthier households, the food could be far more varied. Evidence of this comes from the tomb of Xinjui. Lady Di lived during the early Han Dynasty and was buried in the tomb near modern Changsha. Her burial chamber preserved many objects from her life. Among them were containers holding actual food. Archaeologists discovered remains of meat, grain, fruits, and sauces carefully sealed for the afterlife. These discoveries offer rare glimpses of Han cuisine among the wealthy. The foods placed in the tomb reflected comfort and abundance, but most people lived much more simply. Back in the village house, the bowls are nearly empty. The younger child scrapes the bottom carefully with his spoon. Food is not wasted. Grain represents many hours of labor. Plowing, planting, harvesting, grinding, cooking. Each bowl holds the result of that entire chain of work. The grandmother wipes her bowl clean with a small piece of flat bread. The farmer leans back slightly. For a brief moment, the room is quiet. The fire crackles softly. Smoke drifts toward the roof opening. Outside the village, dogs bark once and then settle again. Still awake. A quiet like helps others find these calm history nights. Pause. The family continues their meal. Eating together mattered in Han society. The shared meal reinforced family bonds. Confucian values emphasized harmony within the household. Respect for elders, care between generations. Food brought everyone together each day, even if the meal itself remained simple. Chopsticks had already become common eating tools by the Han period. Earlier centuries sometimes used spoons more frequently, but chopsticks grew increasingly popular. Thin wooden sticks, easy to hold and reuse. They worked well with grain dishes and vegetables cut into small pieces. Many Han tombs contain preserved chopsticks alongside bowls and spoons, small reminders of ordinary meals. After eating, the bowls are rinsed with a small amount of water, not too much. Water must often be carried from the well, so every drop matters. The bowls dry beside the hearth. The pot returns to its place near the fire. Outside, the sun now stands, high above the fields. Heat settles across the village. For a short while, work may slow. Farmers sometimes rest briefly during the hottest hours. Not a full sleep, just a moment in shade. The farmer steps outside and sits near the doorway. The ox stands nearby, chewing calmly. The younger child watches chickens wander through the yard. The grandmother sits in the shade, mending a tear in a sleeve. Small, quiet tasks fill the pause between labors. Meals like this one happened every day across the Han Empire. Millions of bowls, millions of small fires, millions of families gathering around simple food. The emperor might dine from lacquer trays inside a palace, but the foundation of the empire rested on meals like this. Grain from the fields, cooked in clay pots, shared among families who worked the land. Soon the rest will end. The tools will return to the fields. Work always returns. But for now, the house holds a brief calm. A warm fire, empty bowls, quiet voices. And as the day continues, attention slowly shifts from food itself to the bodies that eat it. The bodies that grow tired. The bodies that must be cared for. Because life in the Han world did not only revolve around work and meals, it also revolved around the simple question of how people cared for themselves, their health, their hygiene, their strange and sometimes surprising ideas about the human body. And those ideas are where our story moves next. Warm water slides into a wooden basin. The sound is gentle, a slow pouring from a clay pot held above the rim. Steam rises where the water meets the cool wood. The room smells faintly of smoke and damp grain from the earlier meal. The farmer dips a cloth into the basin. He wrings it out once, twice, then presses the cloth against his face. Dust from the fields dissolves into the water. The body relaxes a little. In the Han countryside, washing was rarely an elaborate event. Water had to be carried from the well. Wood had to be gathered and burned to heat it. So most households washed carefully, using only what they needed. Hands first, then face, sometimes arms and feet. A full bath might happen less often, but even simple washing mattered. Work in the fields left marks on the body. Sweat gathered beneath robes. Soil crept beneath fingernails. Wind dried the skin. Farmers learned to clean themselves with small habits repeated day after day. A basin, a cloth, warm water when it was available. In towns and cities, the experience could be different. Some urban neighborhoods had communal bathhouses. They were not grand structures like the marble baths of the Roman Empire, but they still offered heated pools where travelers and merchants could wash away the dust of long roads. The water warmed tired muscles. The steam softened the air. For people who spent weeks traveling, the bathhouse could feel like a quiet luxury. Soap, in the modern sense, did not yet exist. Instead, people relied on natural materials. Ash from burned wood could act as a mild cleanser. Mixed with water, it helped loosen oils and dirt from the skin. Certain plants also produce foamy mixtures when crushed. Leaves and herbs sometimes added faint scents. Simple solutions, but useful ones. After washing, the farmer reaches for a comb. It rests beside the wall, carved from bamboo. The teeth are narrow and smooth from years of use. He draws the comb slowly through his hair, once, then again. Hair carried meaning in the Han world. Confucian teachings emphasized respect for one's parents. Because the body was seen as a gift from them, cutting the hair was discouraged, so most people wore it long. Men gathered their hair into top knots. Cloth caps covered the knot during work or travel. Women pinned their hair using slender sticks made from wood, bone, or metal. Archaeologists have uncovered many of these hairpins. Some are plain, others carved with careful designs. Small birds, simple flowers, tiny patterns etched along the shaft. Even ordinary objects could carry quiet beauty. The grandmother sits near the doorway. Her own comb rests in her lap. She moves it slowly through silver strands of hair. Age has thinned it slightly, but she still ties it carefully. Habit lasts longer than youth. The body changes across a lifetime. Children grow quickly. Workers develop strong arms and shoulders. Old age bends the back, slows the step. Ancient physicians watched these changes closely. They believed the body followed patterns just like the seasons. Growth, strength, decline, rest. When illness appeared, people looked for signs within these patterns. A fever meant the body held too much heat. Shivering meant cold had entered. Pain meant some inner balance had been disturbed. These ideas formed the early foundations of Chinese medicine. One physician whose writings became famous was Zhang Zhongjing. He lived during the later years of the Han Dynasty. His medical texts described treatments for fevers and infectious illnesses. Rather than treating every sickness the same way, Zhang Zhongjing studied symptoms carefully. Sweat, chills, thirst, pulse. Each symptom helped guide the treatment. Pulse reading became one of the most important tools of Chinese medicine. A physician would place 2 or 3 fingers gently against the wrist. The pulse beneath the skin revealed the rhythm of the heart. But doctors believed it revealed more than that. The strength of the pulse, its speed, its depth. All suggested different conditions inside the body. A slow pulse might suggest cold inside the body. A rapid pulse might suggest heat. A weak pulse might show exhaustion. The physician listened with his fingers, quietly, patiently. Treatment often involved herbs. Plants from hillsides and forests carried medicinal value. Roots were boiled into teas, leaves crushed into powders, bark dried and ground into mixtures. Each herb carried its own reputation. Some soothed the stomach, others reduced fever, others helped wounds heal. The knowledge of herbs rarely belonged to only one person. Older members of her family remembered which plants worked best. Neighbors shared advice. Traveling healers sometimes passed through villages offering remedies. Medical knowledge grew slowly through generations, piece by piece. Another practice, sometimes used, was acupuncture. Thin metal needles were inserted into specific points on the body. The belief was that energy flowed along invisible channels beneath the skin. If that flow became blocked, illness could follow. The needles helped restore movement within those channels. At least, that was the hope. Historians still debate exactly how widespread acupuncture was during the Han Dynasty. But early medical texts and archaeological finds suggest it was already known. Small bronze needles have been discovered in some sites, quiet evidence of ancient experiments with healing. Not all care focused on illness. People also tried to strengthen the body before sickness appeared. Good food helped. Regular work kept muscles strong. Fresh air filled the lungs. Even long walks between villages contributed to health. Hands told stories of labor. Farmers carried thick calluses along their palms. Weavers developed narrow grooves along their fingers where thread passed again and again. Blacksmiths bore small scars from sparks and hot metal. The body remembered every trade. Teeth were cleaned using small chewing sticks. One end of the twig was softened by biting it gently. The fibers spread apart like a brush. Then the teeth could be rubbed clean. It was simple, but surprisingly effective. Cleanliness did not guarantee perfect health. Many illnesses remained mysterious. Infections could spread quickly. Fevers could appear without warning. Without modern knowledge of bacteria, people explained sickness in many ways. Some believed harmful winds carried disease. Others blamed spirits. Sometimes both explanations existed at the same time. Families responded with patience and care. Warm blankets, herbal teas. Someone sitting beside the sick person through the night, watching, waiting, hoping the fever would break. Life in the Han world was fragile, but people adapted. They learned to care for their bodies with whatever knowledge they possessed. Small routines, repeated daily. The basin of water now sits beside the hearth. Its surface cools slowly. The cloth rests on the rim. The comb returns to its place by the wall. The body feels lighter after washing. A little less dust. A little less strain. Outside, the afternoon light begins to soften. Work will soon resume. But another part of life waits beyond labor and health. The quiet relationships that fill a household. Parents, children, friends, neighbors. And those bonds often meant more than medicine ever could. The basin water grows cooler. No one rushes to empty it. Water is still useful. It may rinse a cloth later or wash dust from hands after another short task. Nothing wasted in a Han household. The farmer sits quietly near the doorway. Sunlight reaches across the floor now, a thin rectangle of light stretching from the door toward the hearth. His hands rest on his knees. The skin across his palms is thick and rough. Calluses formed slowly over years of work. They began as small hardened patches where the wooden handles of tools rubbed the skin. Over time, the skin grew stronger there, harder. The body adapts. Nearly every trade in the Han world left marks like this. Weavers carried fine grooves along their fingertips. Potters developed strong wrists from shaping clay. Blacksmiths had dark scars from sparks and heat. The body remembered every hour of labor, even if history rarely wrote those hours down. Children noticed these marks early. A young boy might press his fingers against his father's palm and feel the difference between soft skin and the hard ridges of work. One day, those same marks would appear on his own hands. Life moved forward in quiet stages: childhood, work, old age. The body changed with each stage. Ancient scholars believed these changes followed natural patterns. Just as the seasons moved through spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the human body moved through cycles of growth and decline. Balance mattered at every stage. Too much strain could weaken the body. Too little movement could weaken it too. Rest helped restore strength, but rest rarely lasted long. The rhythms of farming left little room for idleness. Even during quieter moments, small tasks filled the time. Repairing tools, mending clothes, sorting grain. The grandmother sits near the wall with a small bundle of cloth. A tear runs along one sleeve of the farmer's robe. She threads a needle made of bronze. Her hands move slowly but steadily. Push the needle through the cloth. Pull the thread tight. Another stitch, and another. Needles like this have been found in Han tombs and village sites. Thin metal tools, simple, precise. Evidence of quiet domestic work that filled countless afternoons. The repaired cloth will last another season, maybe longer. Clothing was not easily replaced. Every robe represented many hours of a spinning thread, weaving fabric, cutting and sewing. Care extended the life of every garment. Outside, the younger child washes his hands in a small splash of water. He rubs them together quickly. The dust from playing in the yard turns the water cloudy. Then he shakes his hands dry. Children rarely stay clean for long, but the habit of washing begins early. In larger towns, some people visited physicians when illness appeared. Traveling healers sometimes carried small collections of herbs tied in cloth bundles. They listened to symptoms, felt the pulse, prepared mixtures meant to restore balance. But in villages, families often cared for one another first. Knowledge lived in memory. Which plant helped with stomach pain? Which root soothed fever? Which leaves should never be eaten at all? The grandmother knows many of these plants. She remembers where they grow along the edges of nearby hills. In spring, she gathers them carefully. Some are dried and stored. Others are used fresh. Knowledge like this traveled quietly through generations. No books required, just memory and experience. Even smells sometimes carried healing meaning. Bundles of herbs hung from rafters. Their scents slowly filled the house. Mint, artemisia, dried flowers. Some herbs kept insects away. Others were believed to purify the air. Whether or not they truly cured illness, they made the room feel calmer. And calm itself can help a sick person rest. Illness often brought the household together. Someone prepared warm soup. Someone fetched water. Someone stayed awake through the night beside the patient, watching, listening, waiting. Care became a shared task. Many people recovered. Some did not. Life in the ancient world carried risks that modern medicine has since reduced. Infections spread easily. Small injuries could become serious. Fevers sometimes came without clear cause. Yet communities endured. People adapted. Families supported one another through both sickness and health. The afternoon light begins to soften. Sunlight moves slowly across the floor. The air outside cools slightly as clouds drift across the sky. Soon the farmer will return to the fields, but the body has had a moment to recover. Clean hands, a rinsed face, a short rest in the shade. The basin water is finally carried outside. It splashes gently into the dirt beside the house. even that water returns to the earth, nothing wasted. The comb rests again near the wall. The needle and thread return to their small pouch. The house grows quiet for a moment. Only the faint crackle of the hearth remains. Bodies may grow tired, but they rarely stand alone. Life in the Han world depended on connections between people. Parents raising children, children caring for aging parents, neighbors helping one another during difficult seasons. These relationships shape daily life as deeply as work or food. The bonds of family, the duties between generations, the small kindnesses between friends. As the afternoon stretches toward evening, these bonds become more visible. Children return from errands. Neighbors exchange brief conversations along the village path. A mother calls her son home from the fields. Work may build the empire. Food may sustain it. But relationships give life its warmth. And it is these quiet human ties that we turn to next. The ways people loved, married, raised children, and cared for one another beneath the long centuries of the Han Dynasty. Because behind every field, every tool, and every meal, there was always a family. Children's voices drift across the courtyard, not loud, just the soft rise and fall of play. A stick taps the ground, small feet shuffle in dust. A quick laugh, then quiet again. The sun has moved lower now. Light rests gently on the walls of the house. Shadows stretch across the packed earth yard. An old man sits on a low stool near the doorway. He watches the children. In the Han world, family shaped almost every part of life. The empire was vast, cities large, officials powerful. But most people experience the world through a much smaller circle, the household. A typical household often held more than one generation. Grandparents, parents, children, sometimes uncles or cousins as well. Living together helped everyone. Elders shared knowledge. Younger adults worked the fields. Children carried water, gathered sticks, chased animals from gardens. Each person filled a place. Confucian teachings help shape how these families understood themselves. Respect for elders stood at the center. Filial piety, as later scholars would call it, the belief that children owed deep respect and care to their parents, and that this duty continued even after the parents grew old. The old man in the courtyard leans slightly forward, his back no longer straight. Years of work have curved his shoulders, but his eyes remain sharp. He notices everything. A child dropping a toy, a chicken slipping through the gate, a cloud crossing the sun. His grandson runs past him. Dust rises around the boy's feet. The old man smiles, not widely, just a small curve at the edge of the mouth. Childhood in the Han countryside was not long. Children helped their families early. Young boys learned how to guide animals, how to carry tools, how to follow their fathers into the fields. Girls often stayed closer to the house. They learned cooking, spinning thread, weaving cloth, and caring for younger siblings. But children still found time to play. They carved toys from wood, rolled hoops along dirt paths, played small chasing games between houses. Even in ancient villages, childhood carried moments of laughter. As children grew older, families began thinking about marriage. Marriage was not usually a decision made by the young couple themselves. Parents often arranged the match. They considered many things: family reputation, practical alliances, whether the households could support the union. Marriage joined not only two people, it joined two families. Gifts were exchanged, clothing prepared, food shared during the ceremony. These rituals helped mark the beginning of a new household. The bride often moved into the groom's family home. There, she would help care for his parents and relatives. The household grew again. Another set of hands to cook, weave, and manage daily life. Another voice added to the rhythm of the house. Ideas about proper behavior within marriage were sometimes written down. One well-known example came from Banzhao. She lived during the Eastern Han Dynasty. Her work, often translated as Lessons for Women, described expectations placed on women in elite society. She emphasized humility, diligence, respect within the household. Modern readers sometimes find these rules strict, but they reflected values widely accepted at the time. Order in the family was believed to support order in society. If each person fulfilled their role, harmony followed. Reality was often more complicated. Families argued, children misbehaved, neighbors disagreed. No written rule could remove human emotion from daily life, but the ideals still shaped expectations. One of the strongest duties within Han culture was caring for elderly parents. A grown son might bring his aging mother or father into his household. He provided food, shelter, protection. In return, the elder offered advice and memory. Stories of earlier years, knowledge of crops, weather, and seasons. Historical texts sometimes praised especially devoted children. Stories circulated about sons who carried their parents on long journeys, or daughters who stayed awake all night beside a sick mother. Whether every story was completely true mattered less than the message. Family loyalty was deeply admired. In the courtyard, the old man calls quietly to the children. They slow their game and come closer. He points toward the road beyond the village. Perhaps he is telling a story about traveling there long ago. Perhaps about a harvest from many years past. Children listen, even if they only half understand. Stories pass knowledge forward. Friendship also grew naturally inside village life. Neighbors worked side by side in the fields. They borrowed tools, shared irrigation water, helped repair one another's homes. Hard years made these friendships stronger. If one family lost a harvest to flood or drought, others sometimes helped with grain, not out of charity alone, but because next year the situation might reverse. Mutual support made survival more likely. Even small moments built these relationships. A shared meal after harvest, a conversation beside the well, laughter during a festival. Village life depended on cooperation. The sun drops lower, the courtyard grows cooler. Children grow quieter now. Their game slows. A woman calls from inside the house, her voice calm. Dinner will come later, but preparations must begin. The old man rises slowly from his stool. He steadies himself with one hand against the doorframe. Age moves more carefully, but the household still turns around him. The bonds inside this small courtyard mirror something larger. The empire itself imagines society as a series of relationships: child to parent, wife to husband, subject to ruler, each link connected to the next. Harmony in small relationships was believed to support harmony across the whole realm. Whether that harmony always existed is another question. History shows many moments when it did not, but the idea remained powerful. Evening approaches. The sky fades from bright gold to softer colors. Shadows lengthen along the village path. Neighbors begin returning home from the fields. Voices drift quietly between houses. The children gather their toys. The gate closes. the courtyard grows still again, and as the daylight fades, another part of life begins to come into focus. The world of belief, of ancestors, of spirits remembered and honored. Because in the Han world, family bonds did not end with death. They continued into the unseen world beyond the living. A thin line of smoke rises in the quiet room. It lifts slowly from a stick of incense placed inside a small clay holder. The ember at the tip glows faintly. The smoke curls upward and spreads along the beams of the ceiling. The air is still. Even the smallest movement of smoke feels noticeable. The sun is nearly gone. Only a soft red light remains outside the doorway. The day has begun its slow closing. Near the wall stands a small table. It is not large, just wide enough for a bowl, a cup, and a narrow wooden tablet. The tablet carries a name of someone who once lived here, someone who worked these same fields, someone who sat beside this same hearth. The person is gone now, but not entirely gone. In the Han world, families believe the dead remain close in quiet ways. Ancestors were not forgotten figures of the distant past. They were still part of the household, still remembered, still honored. A small bowl sits before the tablet. Inside it rests a little grain from the evening meal. Next to it stands a cup filled with a small amount of wine. The offering is simple, but that is enough. The family does not speak loudly during this moment. The act is quiet, respectful, almost private. Even when several people stand nearby. Confucian teachings encourage these rituals. Respect for parents and ancestors stood at the center of moral life. A person who cared for their parents while they lived and honored them after death was seen as virtuous. The idea was simple. Gratitude must not end with death. In many Han homes, ancestors were remembered through small wooden tablets like this one. Each tablet carried a name. Sometimes several generations of names rested together inside a small shrine. During certain days of the year, families placed offerings there. Grain, fruit, wine, sometimes incense like the one burning now. The smoke rising from incense carried symbolic meaning. It rose from the world of the living toward the unseen world above, a quiet bridge between the two. After a short time, the offering bowl might be removed. The family could eat the food later. The act itself mattered more than the object. Beyond the village, burial grounds lay among low hills or quiet fields. Simple earth mounds marked many graves. Some had small stones placed nearby. Others remained nearly invisible unless one knew where to look. Families visited these places during certain seasons. They cleaned the area, placed offerings, remembered the names of those buried there. The wealthy sometimes built much larger tombs. The Han Dynasty developed complex burial traditions. Some tombs included long chambers carved underground. Inside them, objects from daily life were placed beside the body. Clay houses, miniature wells, tiny animals, little figures representing servants. These objects were not toys, they were symbols. The idea was that life might continue in another realm after death. The dead might still need familiar things: food, tools, comfort. One of the most remarkable discoveries from the Han period came from the tomb of Shinjui. Her burial chamber remained sealed for more than 2,000 years. When archaeologists opened it, they found an extraordinary collection of objects: silk garments, lacquer bowls, food carefully stored in containers. The tomb offered a rare glimpse into how wealthy Han families prepared for the afterlife. But most people lived much simpler lives, and their burials reflected that. A wooden coffin, some pottery, perhaps a few personal belongings, enough to honor the person who had lived. Belief in the unseen world did not belong to one philosophy alone. Different traditions existed side by side. Confucian teachings emphasized duty and ritual. Taoist thought explored harmony with nature. Folk traditions added charms and protective symbols. Together, they formed the spiritual landscape of the Han world. Taoist thinkers often describe the universe as a balance of forces, opposites working together: light and dark, movement and rest, warmth and cold. When these forces stayed in balance, the world remained healthy. When balance failed, disorder followed. These ideas influenced medicine. They influenced farming. They influenced how people thought about the body and the spirit. The universe was not seen as random. It followed patterns, quiet rhythms. One thinker associated with early Taoist scholarship was Liu An. He supported scholars who studied nature, philosophy, and cosmology during the Han Dynasty. Texts connected to his court explored how human life fit within the wider order of the world. They described a universe filled with subtle forces moving through everything: the wind, the rivers, the body, even the stars. For many ordinary people, these ideas existed alongside simpler beliefs. A charm tied near the doorway, a symbol drawn on paper, a careful choice of lucky days for travel or marriage. These small acts help people feel protected. The world was uncertain. Floods came, illness appeared, storms destroyed crops. Small rituals offered comfort. The incense stick burns lower. The glowing tip grows shorter. Ash gathers beneath it. Outside, the last red light of sunset fades from the sky. Blue deepens. Soon it will become night, and as darkness settles across the fields, the world of the living grows quieter. The incense burns lower. The glowing tip is now small, just a quiet ember at the end of the thin stick. A curl of grey ash bends slowly under its own weight. The smoke grows lighter. Soon it will disappear. Outside, the sky has darkened. The last red color from sunset fades into deep blue. The fields grow quiet. The family steps away from the small table. The offering bowl is lifted gently. The cup is moved aside. The wooden tablet remains where it was, resting against the wall. The name carved into the wood is still visible in the dim light. It will remain there tomorrow and the day after. In the Han world, remembering ancestors was not something done once. It was repeated. Small rituals, quiet gestures, again and again. Memory became part of daily life. Some families visited burial sites during certain seasons of the year. They cleared weeds from the mound, placed fresh offerings nearby, perhaps burned a small amount of incense. These visits connected the living with the generations behind them. People believed ancestors could influence the world of the living, not always in dramatic ways, often in quiet ones: protection, guidance, a sense of continuity. In many ways, this belief helped families endure hardship. If a harvest failed, if illness struck, if storms destroyed crops, people could still feel connected to those who had lived before them. Their ancestors had faced difficult years too, and the family had survived. These thoughts offered comfort, not certainty, but comfort. Other beliefs moved quietly through village life as well. Small charms sometimes hung beside doors, simple symbols carved into wood, or written on slips of paper. They were meant to discourage wandering spirits or attract good fortune. Travelers occasionally carried protective objects with them: a carved token, a scrap of cloth tied in a special knot. Such items held meaning for the person carrying them, even if the object itself was small. Dreams also carried importance. If someone dreamed of water, it might be seen as a sign. Dreams of certain animals might suggest luck. Other dreams brought warnings. Not everyone believed the same interpretations, but many people listened to dreams with quiet attention. Nature itself seemed full of signals: a sudden gust of wind, an unusual bird call, a strange pattern in the clouds. Some believed these events carried hidden messages. Others simply noticed them and moved on. Belief was not identical for every person. The village grows quieter now. Most doors are closed. The sound of conversation fades. Night insects begin their steady chorus in the grass beyond the houses. Inside the house, the hearth burns lower. The fire is no longer bright. Only a few red coals glow beneath the ash. They will last through part of the night, perhaps even until morning. The family prepares for sleep. Bedding is laid across the floor. Straw mats unrolled again. The long day has come to its natural end. Beyond the house, the burial mounds rest quietly beneath the stars. The ancestors remain where they were placed, wrapped in cloth, surrounded by objects meant to serve them in the next world. The living rarely see those tomb chambers, but they know they are there, silent, patient, part of the landscape. The belief that life continues beyond death shapes many small actions: the careful placement of offerings, the respectful silence beside a shrine, the quiet memory of a name. Yet daily life continues. Fields still need plowing. Meals still need cooking. Children still grow. The presence of the ancestors does not stop the world. It simply adds another layer to it, a deeper sense of time. Past and present sharing the same space. The last ember of the incense stick falls away. The smoke is gone now. Only a faint scent remains in the air. Outside, the sky has turned fully dark. Stars begin to appear above the village. The fields stretch quietly beneath them. Rows of crops waiting for morning light. Night has settled across the Han countryside. Homes grow silent one by one. Doors closed. Fires dim. Voices fading into sleep. And with night comes a different rhythm. Slower, quieter, more still. Because the day is finished now, and the village is ready for rest. Soon, only the soft glow of lamps will remain inside the houses. Small flames, moving gently in the dark. And beyond those lights, the long, quiet night begins. A small oil lamp flickers beside the wall. The flame is thin. It bends when a small draft slips through the room. The light it gives is soft and uneven. It reaches only a short distance. The corners of the room remain dark. Outside, the village has grown quiet. The fields rest beneath the night sky. Rows of crops fade into shadow. Paths between houses are empty now. Most doors have been closed. The work of the day is finished. Inside the house, the farmer sits near the hearth. The fire is no longer bright. Only a few red coals glow beneath the ash. Every so often one shifts and a faint spark appears, then fades again. His wife sits nearby with a piece of cloth across her lap. The sleeve of a robe needs another repair. The needle moves slowly in the lamplight. Push, pull, push again. The work is quiet, almost silent. The children lie on their mats. The younger one sleeps already. The older boy still watches the lamp. The flame moves gently. Up, down, up, again. Night in the Han countryside was darker than most modern nights. There were no electric lights, no glowing windows across distant fields, only small lamps like this one. And the moon, when it rose, the oil inside the lamp burned slowly. It was usually made from plant oils or animal fats, enough to keep a small flame alive for several hours, but not much longer. Fuel was valuable. Light was used carefully. Outside, a dog barks once, then stops. The sound travels across the village and fades. In the distance, insects begin their steady chorus, a soft rhythm rising from grass and fields. The sound does not stop. It continues through the night. The farmer adds a small stick of wood to the hearth. The coals glow brighter for a moment. Warmth spreads across the room again. Not strong warmth, just enough. Evenings like this were common across the Han world. After the day's work ended, families gathered indoors. The pace slowed. Voices softened. The body began to rest. Sometimes people spoke quietly together. They might talk about the harvest, or the weather, or small events from the day. Stories were also shared. Old stories passed through generations. Tales of distant journeys, memories of difficult winters, or simple lessons about patience and work. Some of these songs and stories were later collected by officials of the Han court. The government gathered folk songs from different regions. These became part of what is now called the Yuefu tradition. The songs often spoke about ordinary life, long journeys, homesickness, love, and the quiet feelings that fill daily life. But most evenings in the village passed without grand performances. Just a few voices speaking softly in the lamplight. The grandmother lies down slowly. Her bones are tired. Age carries its own rhythm. Earlier to bed, earlier to wake. She folds her robe beneath her head. The straw mat rustles quietly as she settles. Soon, her breathing grows steady. The needle continues moving through the cloth. One stitch, then another. The wife ties the thread and cuts it carefully. The robe is folded and set aside. Outside, the sky is clear tonight. Stars appear above the fields. Small points of light scattered across the darkness. Farmers of the Han Dynasty often watch these stars, not for navigation across oceans, as sailors might, but to follow the passage of seasons. The rising of certain constellations helped mark times for planting and harvest. The sky served as a calendar. Yet tonight, no one in the house studies the stars closely. The day has been long. Rest matters more than observation. Far away in the capital city of Chang'an, night follows different rules. The city gates close after dark. Guards patrol the streets. Watchmen listen for disturbances. Large cities rarely sleep completely, but even there the night grows quieter than the day. Markets close. Officials leave their offices. Lanterns burn in palace halls. Back in the village, the farmer rises slowly. He walks to the door. The cool night air touches his face. He looks out across the dark fields. Nothing moves. The land rests. He closes the door again. The latch settles into place with a soft sound. The lamp burns lower now. The flame is smaller. The oil inside the dish nearly gone. The farmer lies down on his mat. His hands rest against his chest. The muscles in his arms still carry the memory of the day's work. Ploughing, turning soil, guiding the ox. The body remembers even as it relaxes. The house grows very still. Only the faint crackle of cooling coals remains, and the quiet breathing of sleeping people. Outside, the insects continue their soft rhythm. The wind moves gently through the fields. Night settles deeper over the land. The lamp flickers once more, then steadies. Its light grows dimmer. Soon it will go out, and the long quiet of the Han. Night will remain, just darkness and sleep. And somewhere in the distance, the faint promise of morning. The lamp is almost empty. The small pool of oil at its base has grown thin. The wick leans to one side. The flame bends and straightens, bends again. Its light barely reaches the wall now. Pause. The house is quiet, very quiet. Pause. The children sleep first, their breathing soft, even, untroubled. Pause. The grandmother sleeps as well, her hands folded lightly across the blanket, the long years of work resting inside the stillness of the night. Pause. The farmer does not sleep yet, not quite. He lies on his mat and watches the small flame move, up, down, up again. Pause. Outside, the fields lie under the dark sky. Rows of millet and wheat stretch quietly across the land. In the distance, water moves slowly through a narrow irrigation ditch. The sound is faint, almost too soft to hear. Pause. An insect sings somewhere beyond the wall, a steady rhythm. Then another joins it. The night carries many small voices, none of them loud, all of them patient. Pause. The farmer's wife turns slightly in her sleep. The straw mat shifts beneath her. Then stillness returns. Far beyond the village, the empire rests as well. Roads empty, markets closed, soldiers watching distant frontiers beneath the same sky. In the capital of Chang'an, lamps burn inside palace halls, but even there the night is quiet. Officials sleep. Servants move softly through shadowed corridors. The emperor rests behind thick wooden doors, perhaps dreaming, perhaps not. The empire continues, but slowly now, almost silently. Back in the village, the lamp flickers again. The wick darkens. The flame grows smaller. The farmer closes his eyes. His breathing slows. The long work of the day fades from his muscles. Fields will wait until morning. Tools will remain where they were placed. The ox sleeps in its small shelter beside the fence. Above the village, the stars move across the sky. Slowly, almost too slowly to notice. But they move. Generations have watched these same stars. Farmers, children, grandparents, emperors, all lying beneath the same quiet sky. Some searched for immortality. Some ruled great cities. Most simply worked their fields and returned home at night. Their days followed the same gentle pattern. Wake, work, eat, rest, pause, again and again. Seasons passed, children grew, fields changed hands, empires rose and fell, but nights like this remained. The lamp flickers once more, a final small movement of light. Then the flame disappears. The room grows dark. The fields remain, the stars above them, and the quiet of the Han night. Pause. Only the dark now, and sleep.